Emblem of Being. Thanks for your videos. You look really familiar, and I'm pretty sure we went or had at least one or two classes together at UCF a couple years ago. And you also mentioned Sean Gallagher, who's a professor there, obviously. Took a couple courses with him as well, and he's the one that turned me on to phenomenology and Francisco Varela, Evan Thompson. I wrote this book, Mind and Life, which I was going to read something from about Merleau-Ponty and intentionality, if I could find it. Oh, what do you know? So here's one line from Merleau-Ponty about the way subject and object are interrelated, co-constituting, and co-emergent, all those wonderful things. Merleau-Ponty writes, "The world is inseparable from the subject, but from a subject which is nothing but a project of the world. And the subject is inseparable from the world, but from a world which the subject itself projects." And then Evan Thompson continues, "To belong to the world in this way means that our primary way of relating to things is neither purely sensory and reflexive, nor cognitive or intellectual, but rather bodily and skillful. Merleau-Ponty calls this kind of bodily intentionality motor intentionality. His example is grasping or intentionally taking hold of an object. In grasping something, we direct ourselves toward it, and thus our action is intentional. But the action does not refer to the thing by representing its objective and determinant features. It refers to it pragmatically in light of a contextual motor goal affected by one's body. In picking up a teacup to drink from, I identify it not by its objective location in space, but by its egocentric relation to my hands, and I grasp it in light of the goal of sipping from it." So Merleau-Ponty and phenomenology generally are trying to get us out of this very abstract way of thinking, wherein we conceive of the world as pre-existing our experience of it, somehow out there, external and objective, and the mind as somehow trying to produce an internal representational picture of that world. And this is what gets us into this confusion concerning theory of mind. How do we know, first of all, that people have minds at all? And once we've established that, how is it that we figure out what others are thinking and what's motivating them and what their intentions are and so forth? And I think you're right that to construe this as if we have to build up some sort of intellectual model of why other people are doing what they're doing, I think is, as A.N. Whitehead would put it, it's to commit the fallacy of misplaced concreteness, where we mistake these third-person abstract conceptions of what's going on for our first-person embodied perceptual experience of what's going on. Varela and Maturana and following up on that work, Evan Thompson, use this notion of structural coupling to sort of grok the relationship that autopoietic organisms, second-order autopoietic organisms like human beings, to grok the way that we are able to relate with one another. We are structurally coupled. And this does have something to do with mirror neurons, I'm sure. I think there's more research to be done to work out the specifics, but from what I understand, even interspecies structural coupling is possible in the sense that I can internalize in some vague sense what it is like to be the seagull that I watch fly overhead. Our bodies are similar enough that I can, without having to think about it, pre-reflectively internalize the experience of that bird. And similarly with other people, I don't have to build an intellectual model of what they're intending or feeling. I sense it immediately in a pre-reflective way. So this whole notion of a theory of mind, it's sort of an after-the-fact intellectualization of what is, in the first place, in our actual encounters with others, an embodied and mostly tacit or unconscious way of relating. So, and I think this issue runs pretty deeply in the sense that, so much of cognitive science is and neuroscience is still reinscribing this Cartesian dualism between a thinking mind and an extended material substance. Even those who rail against Descartes reinscribe this dualism in a covert way. And I've made plenty of videos accusing people like Dennett of that, which I don't want to get into that now, but I think the issue is to rediscover the primordial numinosity of our embodied experience, and to recognize that we are always already being with one another, as Heidegger would put it. Metasein, I think, is the German, and that's probably not how you pronounce it, but this idea that intersubjectivity is more primary than subjectivity, than separate mental egoic existence. Evan Thompson, in this book Mind and Life, makes the argument that we are born already into an intersubjective cultural matrix, and only learn to distinguish ourselves as individuals with the help of the linguistic domains that are brought forth through our social interactions. And so, you mentioned Holland's network in our attempt to sort of re-enchant the world and bring spirituality back into an authentic spirituality back into the mainstream culture, and recognizing the primacy of intersubjectivity and the way in which we are always already embedded in the world, part of this cosmic process of unfolding that's been going on for 14 billion years. That is pretty spiritual, as far as I can tell. Spiritual as opposed to, say, a simplistic reductionistic materialism, which would, or could lead one to believe that science has basically figured out everything there is to know about the universe, and it's a giant clockwork machine with no intrinsic meaning or purpose and so forth. I think phenomenology is one way of deconstructing that sort of a modern mythic materialistic narrative and replacing it with a more life-affirming, not only for human life, but for the living presence of the earth itself and the whole cosmos when it comes down to it. So I guess I'll leave it at that, but since we're talking about the body, I learned this new trick. A couple of yoga teachers are staying at my house. Let's see if I can do I think this is called the crow. There we go. Alright, that's enough. So yeah, thanks for your video, man. And if you're still in class with Sean Gallagher, tell him I said what's up. Take it easy.